Hello friends, Frogopolis here, and today I'm going to talk about Jason X. I love the Friday the 13th franchise. I remember watching it a few years ago for the first time. I know I'm very late, and just being delighted at how creative and fun they were. With their vague plots and timeline, any director could come in and do anything with it, just have fun. It was great. And my personal favorite thing was that effects artists could come in and just come up with the wildest skills possible for Jason to do, and then just make it. I've always found the craftsmanship in horror movies to be really cool. You see Jason do something ridiculous. One of the funniest examples of this is when he put some poor woman in a sleeping bag and just started banging her body against a tree until she died. And I'd wonder, how did they put that together? Now, unfortunately, due to the censors at the time, we didn't get to see some of the truly wacky things people had come up with. A prime example of this is the 7th movie, where they pretty much cut out all the good parts. Like Jason literally punching through a guy and holding his guts. Now, it may sound horrible as a non-horror fan as to why I would want to see such terrible things, but you have to remember, a team of people put a lot of time and effort into making these shots, and they were just simply lost because someone thought they were too gruesome. Of course, I say all this while also understanding the unfortunate irony of having to censor the violence for YouTube. I bring this all up because even though each film was pretty silly in retrospect, you can see that there was a lot of people that were passionate about it and wanted to make something memorable for the audience. Okay, they were mostly memorable and fun. Sorry, 5. And as mentioned earlier, I'll be talking about my absolute favorite entry, Jason X. So we all know the story. In the first movie, Pamela Voorhees kills a bunch of camp counselors because they let her son drown the year before. And then he comes back as a full-grown man somehow in the next movie and starts killing everyone because they killed his mom. So he goes on this revenge spree for like 4 movies, and apparently this all happens in a surprisingly short amount of time. And in this time, we have someone dressing up as his mother to distract him, Crispin Glover just busting a move, the most annoying guy in horror history. Then we have Kid Corey Feldman showing up, who dresses up as Jason to confuse him, and then kills him with a machete. Then we have the 5th movie, and you might be surprised to hear that because the last one was called The Final Chapter, but this isn't Jason, this is some guy dressing up as Jason so he can kill a bunch of people as revenge after some random guy kills his son. Okay, then the 6th one happens, and he comes back as a zombie, don't worry about it. And then the 7th one, he faces off against some with psychic powers. And then the 8th one, he hitch rides on a boat, and then stays on the boat for a while until going to Manhattan and walking around for a bit before getting killed by like sewer sludge. But then in the 9th one, they didn't have the rights to the Friday the 13th name, but they could still use Jason. So they're like, screw it, let's have him blown up, and then even though he's dead, he's going to start possessing people, and then those possessed people will start killing people. There's some ceremonial dagger or something, and he comes back and then gets dragged down to hell by Freddy Krueger. And then we're on Jason X. I hope you wrote all that down. Trivia night is tomorrow. In Jason X, we are in the far-off year of 2010, where Jason Voorhees is being held because of his magical regeneration powers that scientists want to study. How was Jason captured? It doesn't matter. He's going to be cryogenically frozen, so it's easier to study him. But then David Cronenberg shows up and says, I went over your head. We're not going to freeze him. We're going to study him while he's alive, because it'll be better.
I don't want him frozen, Rowan. I want him soft.
And I think that's a terrible idea, and so does Rowan, our main hero of the story. But Dr. Wimmer thinks everything will be fine, because he has a bunch of army guys with him. What's the worst that could happen? Well, a bit earlier on, one of the guards had put a blanket over Jason's head, and Jason pulls a Houdini, so when they come inside and take off the blanket, it's that guy instead, and Jason starts killing everybody. What a clever guy. I told you he was magical. So Jason's going on a rampage, and now Rowan has to make a run for it. Oh hey Jason, how did Jason get right beside her? How did he get a machete? Wouldn't you like to know? So she runs away and lures him to where the cryogenic freezing chamber is. Smart move. Shoots him into it and then closes it. Seems like everything's good and done. So she goes to take a look-see at our boy Jason, and Jason stabs her right through the chamber because he's just that strong, and that causes all the cold to seep out of it too. So now she's gonna freeze along with him. Then we're taken to the future in the year 2455. Earth is now a desolate wasteland, and everyone lives on Earth 2. A team of explorers are on Earth 1 exploring, and they find the facility that Jason and Rowan are frozen in. They make the smart decision to open Jason's chamber, and his frozen body falls forward, and it's still holding the machete so it cuts off a guy's arm. They also find Rowan's frozen body, and since they opened the chamber, she's not going to be as well preserved, so they have to hurry onto the ship and get her unfrozen and healed up. And they also bring Jason because, you know what, sure, why not?
What's a hockey mask?
Facial armor. Used in a sport outlawed in 2024.
So we get onto the ship and we meet our crew, and this section I like to call Frogopolis got distracted by the IMDb page. So we have two people that were in Andromeda, but one of them was also in Stargate SG-1, and another one was in Stargate Atlantis. And one of the girls that were in Andromeda married one of the producers from Stargate SG-1, and I think they're still together, so that's nice. Apparently Stoney was in like 86 episodes of The Young and the Restless. And multiple of the actors in this movie have had parts in Murdoch Mysteries. There's been like 4 of them in Murdoch Mysteries. Is any of this matter or have anything to do with Jason X? No, but this is what happens when I start looking up the movie on IMDb. Okay, back to Jason X. If we thought people would have changed 400 years in the future, we'd be wrong, because it's a bunch of horny young people and there's a stoner. The stoner's name is Azrael, by the way, not Stoney, who also played one of Claus's followers in the Umbrella Academy. Okay, fine, I'm done. We get to see some cool future tech as they start to de-thaw Rowan and start working on Jason, who they notice is very abnormal. We also get to see nanotechnology repair Ezreal's arm after it got chopped off. The doctor working on Jason is Adrian, who had help to begin with, but her 2 assistants just want to go boink each other, so she tells them to leave. Keeping up with the tradition of this franchise, we get our obligatory sex scenes. We get this very cute scene between Kayam and Sanarin, where Sanarin's trying to give her nipples, and they keep falling off because she's an android. I like these two. They're very sweet together and very funny. Now, as we all know, Jason hates coitus, so his spidey sense goes off, and he gets up, and he's pissed. And he ends up killing Adrian by flash freezing her face and then smashing it. Then he gets himself a shiny new machete and starts his rampage. Second ago, Stoney. He's dead. He's out of here. Meanwhile, we have a scene of Professor Lowe where he's talking to one of his superiors, and they're talking about how he de-thawed this woman and also this big guy. And for whatever reason, this superior guy knows who Jason is and starts telling Lowe everything about him. He also tells him that Jason is very hard to kill and has these special properties. So now Lowe wants to keep Jason alive so he can figure out the science behind it and make himself rich. At this point, you might be thinking of some similarities to another horror movie set in space, and yep, you're right. Rowan's been de-thawed and is getting used to the future. She doesn't know that Jason is even on the ship, let alone running around killing people. And she has a conversation with Professor Rowe and starts telling him all about Jason and how hard he is to kill. So wouldn't it be a surprise to her when they find out that they not only brought Jason on, but they've started doing research on him. And he doesn't want to get rid of the body because it's too valuable. And besides, he he's dead. He's super dead. So anyway, they find Adrian's body and put the whole ship on lockdown. And then on top of that, Kinsa shows up covered in blood, and she's all like, oh no, Stoney's dead and there's a murderer running around. Thankfully, we have my man Sergeant Brodsky on the case, and he's going to get a group of his soldiers together to take this guy out. While he's getting them together, we see Azrael and Dallas playing this VR game where they're fighting these big 3D aliens. These things might look silly, but back in 2001, absolutely terrifying. Jason comes by and tries to kill them and he's just so confused. I like this scene just because it's so charming and shows that the director and crew knew exactly what they were making. These two don't seem too fazed by Jason, and they turn off the simulation to get mad at them. Jason's having none of this though, and he gives Azrael a backbreaker, and then he smashes Dallas's head into the wall. There's a lot of head smashing in this one. Rest in peace, Azrael. You should have been named Stoney. Jason moves on to his next victim, but before he can strike, the cavalry arrive. I'm sure these future guns will be way more effective against Jason. Yes? Maybe? No, he got away somehow. They put all the rounds in him and he's fine. He starts hunting down all the soldiers and killing them all one by one. He kills one guy by tossing him off an edge and he falls on a drill. So his body just twirls down while being impaled by the drill. This is what I'm talking about. These are the creative kills I come for. It's time for a Jason murder speed round. Jason gives this guy the old solid snake. He gets this woman with a machete. Classic. She dies off screen, but is later found this hanging around, but she's not gonna get off the hook for that one. This guy tries to fight Jason and is doing pretty well before Jason makes him half the man he used to be. Well, that didn't go as planned, but thankfully we still have Sergeant Brodsky to kick his ass. Oh, never mind.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog. Yeah, that ought to do it.
Now, this ship has been headed towards the Solaris, which is a large space colony, and that's been their mission this whole time. And they're hoping they can get there and get their way to safety. Professor Lowe starts talking to the pilot, but then Jason shows up and kills the pilot. So now there's no ship pilot, and the ship is this blissfully floating through space and headed right towards the larger ship, and I guess the Grendel, which is the ship they've been on this whole time, was a bit sturdier because it crashes right into Solaris, destroying it, and it blows up. And with that, Jason Voorhees now has the largest kill count in slasher history. Probably. Now they're all rightfully freaking out, and it just gets worse when Jason crashes through into their room and they have to run off and they leave Lowe to die. Not on purpose, of course, but honestly, it's Professor Lowe. But Lowe has an idea. Jason just wants his machete back, so he gives it to him. Now Jason has 2 machetes. I have some good news though. While they're looking through the ship for survivors, they find Sergeant Brodsky, and he's alive. It's a miracle. Now they're on to plan, I don't know, G, and they have to fuel up the escape pod so they can get out of there. They send up 2 guys, one being their co-pilot, and he's going to do what he can to fuel up the pod, get back down, and then they can all go to safety. He says he's A-okay, so he sends the other guy off, and he should know better because he already almost died once. Then Jason shows up again, and this time he's holding Professor Lowe's head, and he kills the co-pilot. This poor man lives through the Microsoft conflict and gets taken out like this. It's a damn shame. Kinsa was helping with the fueling process, and when she hears him getting murdered, she freaks out and refuses to leave the escape pod. And she's also too terrified to let anyone into the escape pod. And she starts it going, but she forgot to detach the fuel pipe. So the escape pod ends up crashing into the ship and blowing up. It looks like these guys can't catch a break, and then Jason shows up. It's almost like he can teleport or something. But don't worry, because KM14 and Sonaran show up, and he's given some upgrades to her. And here we get the greatest fight ever filmed in space. Jason stabs her with one of his machetes. Oh no, call an ambulance. But not for her. It was a ruse and she goes on the attack. She just starts shooting the shit out of him and doing flips. It's great. And then when he's dazed, she takes out a BFG and then starts shooting off his limbs and then blows up his head. And the day is saved. All they have to do is get off the ship, is what I would say if we hadn't seen the movie poster and the trailers. Now this ship has been taking heavy damage throughout the movie, and one side is just completely destroyed. And they find out that the damage also destroyed the hull of the other side. So now it's leaking and they're all going to suffocate unless they get to safety. Thankfully, rescue has arrived. So their idea is that they're going to rig up explosions to blow up the damaged part that also has Jason on it and go to the safe area. But they weren't expecting Uber Jason to show up. They just happened to kill him right where all the medical stuff is, so all the little nanobites that cured Rowan also cured Jason and give him a new body. KM14 goes in for round 2, but her bolts can't penetrate Uber Jason, and Jason just punches her head off. They have to get away from Jason, and they're trying to fight him off and survive, and they need to get through that door to the safe area, but he's just throwing them all around. And Waylon gets knocked against the wall and gets incapacitated. And they have to leave him there to die, unfortunately. There's nothing they can do. He does get his badass moment though, as he takes the detonator out of his shirt, gets his one-liner out, and then blows himself up along with Jason.
Hey, asshole!
But goddammit, this is Uber Jason, and he survives, and he punches through the hall, opening up the vacuum to space. So they had to escape that scenario, but poor Janessa gets stuck behind because she's getting sucked into space. She tries to hold on, they try to save her, but she dies. She does get her line in though.
Oh, this sucks on so many levels!
So the rest of them get to safety, and the rescue pod shows up. But god damn it, the door going out to the rescue pod is faulty. So now Sergeant Brodsky has to put on a spacesuit, go out into space, and fix the electricity so it works. I just want to take a moment to point out KM's animatronic head. I just think it's neat. Sergeant Brodsky gets the repairs done, but Jason's closing in, so they have to distract him. And how they do this is that they turn on a hologram that looks exactly like Camp Crystal Lake. So Naren plugs in KN14's head, and she's just able to recreate Crystal Lake, and Jason is just, of course, very confused at that point. Soon, Jason notices, hey, this doesn't look right, and notices Sonarin. So, Sonarin has to create another distraction, and that's when KN14 makes 2 babes, and Jason hates babes, especially ones that love premarital sex. Once again, another scene in the movie I just absolutely adore. This being the last movie in at least this part of the franchise, having him kind of go back to Camp Crystal Lake and having fun of the whole him killing horny teenagers thing again was a lot of fun. He quickly kills those 2 holograms, and if you want to know the science behind that, I have no idea. Like I said earlier, Jason's a magician. Thankfully, this gives our heroes just enough time to get the door working and make a mad dash to the escape pod. But poor Sergeant Brodsky has to stop him from getting close, so he stays behind to sacrifice himself and fight him off. Rowan, Sonarin, and KM make it to the escape pod, and they're finally safe. As they're flying away, they see their ship blow up. But wait! Jason comes flying through space towards the escape pod. But Sergeant Brodsky also comes flying in and tackles Jason away. And now Sergeant Brodsky and Jason are just flying towards Earth and burning up. And with that, Jason is finally defeated. Seriously, for real. Have you remembered to thank Sergeant Brodsky today? We get one last scene of our survivors, and we see a couple on Earth 2 seeing a shooting star and making a wish. And right at the end, we see Jason's burnt up mask. What a fitting end for the franchise. Jason X perfectly captures the spirit of these movies, and years later is still a great time, and I highly suggest finding it and watching it. Bring friends, bring your family. I was delighted to find out that there is a behind-the-scenes featurette on the DVD I brought. As a kid of the 90s and early 2000s, it was really interesting to see them talk about the wonderful emerging world of computer effects. Sure, we've come a long way since then, but seeing how they did it is still really cool to me, and seeing how they explain how it works was also really cool. They also show all the practical effects that they used, and all the lifelike molds that they made for all the characters they killed off, and all the little details that went into Kane Hodder's costumes for Jason Voorhees. While it's all very silly looking nowadays, I still think it's a cool watch if you're interested in a bit of history of horror filmmaking. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed listening to a frog talk about Jason Voorhees for 20 minutes, maybe leave a like and subscribe, or a little comment. Either way, I'm just happy you stopped by. Join me next time where I talk about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Until then, have a great day. See you later.